Willie D Live.
Gibb,
Mm-hmm.
Gibb, man, you literally seen the game from the dungeon to the
Mm-hmm.
big stage. I follow you on Instagram and I see a lot of what you post, and you're not afraid to wear your heart on your sleeve. You lit them up, whatever you're thinking. This is what I'm thinking. But sometimes you kind of slick with it though, because sometimes you just kind of post something, put it out there, and see what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You like you want to get it started. You know,
Yeah.
some you like to start shit a lot. You know,
Yeah.
like but you want to just see what's happening, right?
Yeah.
But you do have a penchant for calling out the BS. You know, and what I want to know is, has there ever been a time in your life, in your career specifically, where you've had to compromise your spirit to keep the movement going?
No, I think it was a time where I recognized that spirit being in front of my face. I recognized um, it's almost like you wait for those times and you wait for these accolades. But when you get into these places, you also have to understand there's things that people have to do to get the accolades. I've never been a person that like to be in I call it the get along game. It's like I follow what the masses follow. I've never been a person like that. And I think that's really because of the rearing of my father, the rearing of my mother, always thinking about what this is, how it affects you, and how do you avoid it. I think the situation that you're asking about is probably the situation when after LaFace closed, and I think only me and CeeLo got major deals, and Timo and Cujo didn't have a major deal. And I think in that time space, I made a decision to go to LA and ask him to drop me, because I looked at it like, if me and CeeLo was to put an album out separately on a label, we would be competition. And I didn't want to have anything to do with making one of my brothers my competition on the same label. So I asked LA to release me. And I walked away from a $500,000 deal and went to Koch at the time, opened up Goody Mob Records, because I didn't want to leave Timo and Cujo behind. And I gave both of them the opportunity to put records out. And they put out the Lumberjack albums, and I put out my first solo album. And we put out a Goody Mob album without CeeLo. So I think that was the time that I think I was put in a place of understanding. The industry wants you to think about you and yourself. That's not what raised me. The one man game and that wasn't what raised me. What raised me was, if I get in, I'm supposed to pull 5 more in. And I think hip hop stopped being like that once the money started coming in. I think once money started coming in and fame started coming in, and then another group of kind of people start coming around you, it's like they always come around your crew and they pick who they like. And then they start taking him here and making him feel special and more valuable than the rest of the crew. And I've always had an eye for that. Like, I was like one of the protectors of the dungeon. So when you came to the dungeon back in the day, if you couldn't get past us, then that means we didn't trust you. So to have that kind of system before we was in music, once we got into music, I really became a headache to executives. Because I would a lot of times be like, man, you ain't did shit to tell me nothing. And if they were to take their credit card away from you, you ain't worth nothing. So why do I have to value your opinion about where this group or where we going as a group? And I think my, my voicing that out loud, some people say, man, you could have been as big as this person or that person. But I'm like, you know what? Where Gipp at, this is where I need to be. Because see, the difference between me and a lot of artists is that I'd already experienced a lot of life. I had my first car at 16 years old. I had already been on train, planes, and everything else before I got to the industry. So the industry never was nothing. Only thing they were giving me was a bigger stage and showing me what fame was. But as far as coming from a solid household with rules and regulations, oh man, the industry, I was ready for the industry before I got there. Because I knew what I was not gonna do. And I knew what I wasn't gonna participate in. And yeah, people used to look at Gipp and be like, man, Gipp just, wow. I mean, we were going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame one time, and your partner, who got those Scarface brand. He went to Gipp. Man, them shoes, I don't know about you can hang with me today. I don't know if you can hang with me today. Those shoes too wide for me. And I'm just like, but what you don't understand is that when we first got into the industry, it was like around us, we was working at the dungeon, but at that time, really back in that time, you couldn't even get into no studio. You couldn't even go into the waiting area unless you had time booked. And at that time, that was boss town. So a lot of times we would be out in the parking lot all day while Organized Noise went in there and did the music. So with that being said, it taught me from the jump, like, hey man, you gotta put yourself in the position. You also gotta care about the position to make sure nobody destroys the opportunity for you. And one thing that we learned during those times, we would go to dark, and George Clinton was always there. So George Clinton would come back to the dungeon and he would see us and he would like, y'all a weird bunch of fellas, man. Y'all. And one thing he told me one day, he said, we was getting ready for a show. And I think I walked in front of him and he looked. He said, Gil, what that is you got on? I said, do what I'm about to go on stage. He said, man, how you start this if the people in the crowd got on the same thing you got?
Mm.
And from that, I said, I gotta make my own clothes. And I remember the first time I did it at a music conference in Nashville. And it was Arista and the premier record companies was Bad Boy and LaFace. And I remember it was all of the Dungeon family and with all the Bad Boy and Puffy them. And I just remember them coming in and Puff was on his shit that day. Man, he learned a little something about the country boy, man. He came in looking, hey man, I need to hurry up. And I remember everybody just looking like, what that Gipp got on, man? And I said, you might not understand my southern dialect because I talk a certain way, but you're going to remember what I look like when I leave. And George Clinton said, Gipp here, when you make music, your clothes supposed to look like the music. So when you always saw Gipp, I always tried to make my clothes look like the music.
Mm. What's interesting is George Clinton. You got to be weird if George Clinton called you weird. Because George had no problem standing out, like, doing something that was totally unconventional. Weird in a good way, He's always been that type of dude. Even to this day, George Clinton is like that. What is it that you believe that people get wrong most about Southern artists besides the music? What's that biggest misconception?
That we slow, because we talk slow.
Mm.
No, we talk slow. We think fast.
Mm-hmm.
We let you think you're winning, but you're losing in the end. so having that, coming up during them times where people used to just come around and think people slow because where they from, it gave us an advantage a lot of time.
What's the trip part is this. The people who act like that, they forget that they're from the South.
Yeah.
Their roots are right here in the South.
Mm-hmm.
The people who paved the way for them, those people who bought land early on, those people who were trailblazers, those who fought back, they were from here. They. It's almost like they believe they've been systematically programmed to believe the hype, just like people who are not us, who
Right.
don't have our experience.
Right.
It's like they watching these shows on TV and they think that's what it is. 'Cause I remember I went to St. Louis once, and these girls were in our dressing. I mean, not dressing room, but in our hotel room. Couple girls, they were sitting on the bed and they were fascinated by us from the South.
Just talking.
Fascinated with the vernacular, just fascinated. And so I saw it, I peeped it, and I was like, he was like, what's it like in Texas? And I say, well, what we don't have is all of this madness that y'all have in y'all city, where people are always fighting and killing each other. If you have a problem with somebody, you have to go to the sheriff and ask for a shootout. You have to request a shootout.
Yeah.
For real? So yeah, like if you have a shootout, you got to request it from the sheriff. And your friends or somebody else, they cannot get into it. Your family members and stuff, they cannot try to jump in, because if they do, automatically that's a hanging. So people know the rules, so they don't try to help people fight. So we don't really have a bunch of fights and shootouts and stuff, because you have to take 10 paces and turn around and shoot at sundown. I mean, at high noon. I said the gunfights are always scheduled at high noon. And, you have to count 10 paces. You have to walk away from your opponent. Then you have to turn around and you shoot. And whoever left standing, they win the shootout and they don't go to jail. The other person go to the cemetery, the other person go home, and it's squashed. It's over. And we also don't have the pollution y'all have. When we go to school, y'all got carpool. We go to school and work in wagon pools. Man, these girls was believing every single thing I said, because they watching these damn cowboy western movies, and it's throwing them off. They not understanding that you can come to the South with that type of attitude, like people are slow. You can come here, riding, on the plane, on the top of the plane, and go back underneath the plane.
Yeah.
They don't understand that. So yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. There's so many other, cases of that, but I think people are kind of warming up to the fact that not everybody in the South is slow.
Yeah, I think they warming up to it now more, because I tell people, they ask me like, yeah, what's so different between now and then? It's just that it seemed like in the 90s, every time I feel like our people figure out something, they change the rules. And I would say it a lot of times out loud, like what Jay did for Houston, what Luke did for Miami, what Easy did for the West. It just seems like all my heroes and the people that I listen to, they always at a subpar level when it comes to other areas of music. And a lot of times I look at the men that helped us get to where we were going. We didn't have no manual. We just had raw talent. And I feel like now that I get to this age and I look back, I say, damn, we thought the game was so true when the game was so fixed. We wrote and produced everything. Now we finding out it's been ghostwriters and ghost producers from the beginning. This shit was pop music. And, once you figure that out, it is more about business. But, people say all this. I hate when executives be like, 90% business, 10% talent. That's a lie. That's just a lie.
It's flipped.
It's flipped. Because at the end of the day, my talent gonna outlast your bullshit. George Clinton is proof of that. We got too many heroes around here that's proof that they outlived and outlasted everybody who told them it was over. So when you look at that, you like, that's just a scam for you to steal more from the artist. And then when you look at just like you look at how they got it set up. At one time, you know, you can get you give somebody something, they give you something back. Now they got music set up where you give them something, you don't get nothing back. You don't get an album to look at. You don't get no credits to look at. You don't even get a physical copy. But they got your physical money. To me, I just feel like once New York understood that they couldn't put the South in a bottle, they changed the rules of how they pay us.